Okay, Coach, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, and so I'll just kind of walk us in, and then we'll just do – like I talked to TJ last night on the phone, and I told TJ, I said, man, I'm not a journalist. I'm a coach. First of all, I'm a player. I love the game. And so we just two guys talking about basketball. That's all it is. And so I'll just kind of walk us in and we'll go. Welcome to another edition of the Show Me Hoops podcast. We're the #1 podcast for basketball fans in the state of Missouri. Today I'm joined by a very good friend of mine, a guy I've known for years and years, Coach Corey Frazier from the St. Louis area. But, Coach, you're always a Charleston Blue Jay to all of us back at home in southeast Missouri. So, Coach, how you doing?
Man, I'm good. I bleed blue. You know how that goes.
Absolutely. And I told TJ last night, I talked to TJ on the phone. I know he's one of the guys that you work with, and I gave him a message. I said, be sure and just tell him that there's more banners hanging in Scott County than there are.
Hey, believe it or not, man, you know, I'm here in St. Louis City, and the craziest thing is, you know, they get to talking about the city-state championships, and I'm like, well, I know Charleston don't have as many as Vashon, so I brag on Scott County. Y'all ain't got more than Scott County Central, so I ain't trying to hear nothing y'all talking about up here. So,
thank you, Coach.
You know, that's all. I'm always going to rep the boot heel no matter what.
I'm glad we can give you some bragging rights there, but
appreciate it.
You're doing big things in St. Louis, and real quick, I'm going to tell everybody a story that you and I know about that a lot of people may not know. But years ago, Coach, this is kind of an I told you so moment. But years ago, I was coaching at Bell City, and I was leaving to go coach at Scott County, and they had brought you to the table, and I mean, it was right to the point you were ready to sign. And right before you did, you called me. We were friends, and you called me, and you just said, hey, I need some advice. And so we talked back and forth. And not that I tried to talk you out of coming, but I just gave you my perspective. Hey, I think you're doing big things in St. Louis, and those things are not going to be available to you down here. And so, now all these years later, look at all the things you're doing in St. Louis with the Brad Bill Elite, with what you've done with the Eagles, with what you're doing with your training. Now you're the head coach at John Burroughs. And so the only thing I'm trying to say is you're welcome. So,
you know what? And I do. I remember driving back home. I remember calling my mom and talking to him. And I asked, I said, who can I call to give me the best? He was like, you know the guy that's at school, right? I'm like, I just saw him. She was like, talk to him. He can tell you, ins and outs. So, man, as always, I appreciate you, man. And we've had some great history, and glad that we finally resurfaced and touched base, man. I'm excited to talk to you, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you're a great coach. You're a great high school coach. You've had the success. It speaks for itself. But I'm very interested in hearing about the skills training work that you're doing on the side. Because, that's just a whole layer of the game. It's always been there, but it's much more prevalent now. And like we were talking about off the air, there's a vacuum that high school coaches cannot operate in because of the state rules with MSHA. So that, if I'm a guy that really wants to work and really wants to get better, my coach can't really work with me, say, in the spring. School's still going on. He can't work with me, but he can work with you. Right. So talk a little bit about that dynamic. How much do you work with the high school coaches? How much input do you guys try to have as far as having the same message? And especially like in a much more urban area like St. Louis, where maybe all the coaches don't know each other.
Right. Well, it's kind of a unique situation, and the best thing is to have good relationships with coaches throughout the state or wherever it may be. I know I've been blessed and fortunate enough to do that with the top high school coaches here in the area, like Coach Blossom over at Webster Groves, Coach Irons down at Vashon, Coach Justin Tatum over at CBC, Frank Bennett at Chaminade. So the list goes on. Hazelwood Central, Brandon Gilmore, who's the new head coach there. We all kind of are in the same circle in terms of bouncing kids off, and they know when they get with me, it's going to be what they want versus anything else. But they also know I'm going to give the kid what the kid absolutely needs in terms of the knowledge, where his coach wants to do. And I stop in dead tracks in the middle of a training session and just be like, hey, I know Coach Blossom's not going to allow you to do that. Like, I'm letting you know he's not going to let you do this, so we're not going to even work on certain things. But in hindsight, we still prepare them for the next level. So everything I do with a kid, I make sure, is within reason in terms of legally things that we're supposed to do, but also make sure that everything that we do, it will work in the system that he's going to play in. So I call Coach Blossom like, hey, and it's funny, a quick story, Cartier Gordon was just getting off his injury or what have you, and they've been keeping an eye on what he's doing, what he's eating and all that stuff, and he looks good, by the way. So St. Louis, he was getting another good player. So, I'm a Billiken, I got to say that. But
that's right.
Coach Blossom calls me up, is like, hey, you got Cartier today? And I'm like, yeah. He said, well, he don't like to tell the truth about where he's going to be at. So that's kind of the things that we get in terms of, coaches. We have those relationships. We all call on each other for a little bit of everything. So it's a unique situation for us here in St. It may not be like that in every city, but they'll call on me and like, hey, can you work with this guy? Man, I can't get him to do X, Y, Z or whatever it is. And, I let them know, hey, I work with him on this. So when he gets back, tell me what it looks like, and we'll go back to the drawing board. So that's the way we work together.
Yeah, that's a great point that you just made as far as working together, because it's not that way in in anything in life. Nothing is it's not never or always. You're always going to have it's most of the time or some of the time in reality.
Right.
With your situation, first of all, you've got just a great reputation. Everybody knows you do a great job, and then you're working with other great coaches. I know of situations in other parts of the state where, the AAU coach is telling the kid, oh, your coach is not using you right, or, and I think that when we're not all on the same page for this kid, we hurt this kid. We really hurt the kid is what we do. And if you think back to like you grew up playing for Coach McFerrin, who we both know and love. Coach Mack is a legend. When you're growing up playing, you had really one voice in your ear, but that was Coach McFerrin. When I was growing up playing, I had one voice in my ear. That was Ronnie Cookson. Not that other people don't try to give you advice, but the structure of how kids were coached growing up was very different than it is now. And I'm not saying that it was better then, but it's very different. And I think that now with so many moving parts between the high school coach, the AAU coach, the skills trainer, all the people, if you can get everybody on the same page, I think it is better now, because the kids who really want to work can keep playing year round. If everybody's not on the same page, I think that's where you see, I think it just hurts the kid.
Yes, it does. And like I said, you have to be a trusting coach and really understanding your strengths as coaches. And everybody has a weakness. I have my own. I'm just now developing more of the offensive side of X's and O's as a coach. But I study a lot of different coaches, as I was saying off the air. We go and find out what are they doing across the country and see where we need to be here in the Midwest and see what we need to do to work, especially St. Louis being a hotbed right now for talent. And we got, 5 or 6 guys in the NBA right now. Just the state of Missouri alone, we got a ton of guys, about 7 or 8 in the NBA right now. But you have to know and trust your strengths and weaknesses and be able to let your kid go somewhere where they can get the proper help, because it's only going to benefit you in the long run. Like I don't pride myself in kids coming to me and work with me and like, oh, I want to go to your school. I don't get involved in that stuff because I have a better respect for the game, number one. Number two, if you start in my door, then I expect you to finish in my door. And I expect for every program to be the same, even though they're not. But if you go to school at Webster Groves, I expect for you to stay at Webster Groves. I'm going to help you at Webster Groves, but I don't want you to come to me and think about going to a different school because, a lot of times that's what a lot of coaches that think, especially ones that don't know you.
Sure.
So you have to be, real upfront about that. But I've never had that experience where, I've had a kid come in and work and want to get out of his school situation. It doesn't work like that for me. So it's bigger than basketball. I want you to be good at where you're at, but also let me help to prepare you for the collegiate level if you choose to do so.
Right. And so kind of walk me through a workout, Coach. Like if I'm coming to work out with you today, what's your general philosophy? First of all, you work with Pure Sweat. And a lot of our listeners are familiar with Pure Sweat. My brother, who's the head coach at North Pemiscot right now, he and we talk about Pure Sweat a lot, and we kind of laugh a little bit about Pure Sweat because on the one hand, you've got guys like Drew, who's phenomenal at teaching the game, guys like you who are really good, and then you got some other guys out there that maybe don't fine-tune it as much as you guys do, So take me through a workout, like what's your philosophy on an individual workout? Down to how long is the workout, and what are your real objectives with a player when you get him?
Just a typical day. And before they even come in the gym, I have to find out everything about them. And I don't care what level they are. They could be a beginner or what have you, because I do train all levels and I've worked with professional athletes. So right away, who has he been working with? That gets me familiar with the teaching and what he already knows. What high school does he go to? Or what college does he play at? Okay, what type of system is he in? To kind of walk me through and give me a good general idea on what I want to work on. What do you see him doing? And the hardest thing to do is listen to a parent, because a parent is going to tell you everything great. Their kid has no weaknesses. So you're really looking at a used car salesman when it comes to parents. And there's no knock against them. They just, who's going to say anything bad about them? And then you have some that are too realistic and go over the top. Man, he can't do this or that. So I try to find out as much as I can about the kid, how's his attitude and all that, so I know what buttons to push and where to push them. When they get in, the first day of a workout for me, I kind of do my own breakdown of the player. I don't start off basic. I dive right in and just throw some stuff at him that he's probably never seen before. The way I teach is I'll break whatever down we're going to do. So if I'm working with a post guy who's, let's say Jason Tatum, for instance, first thing we want to work on, being his size, let's go right to the mid-range, because he can put the ball on the floor. We already know that, but we'll go right to the mid-range, and I'll test him, see what he knows, how's his footwork, how's his IQ. So we'll give him a move to do, the most basic and general move we can think of. We'll give him that move to do, and then if he does it and he moves well with it and we see his footwork is precise and what we want without really saying, then we'll move on to the next thing, and we'll go from showing that move to put him in a game-like situation where I add a defender. I'll add a help defender and get them to read and how to move the defense with ball fakes and things of that nature. So it's kind of a game-like experience that you're going to get. It's like practice. You'll practice it this way. You have your dummy defense, and then we'll go live. And then you got to keep doing that rep until you no longer can get it wrong.
And you just said the key word for me, which is footwork.
Yes.
I think it's one of the most under-taught parts of the game. And as a very young coach, my very first year, as a matter of fact, I went and watched Coach Best practice over at Three Rivers, another legend from our part of the state. And right away, I was blown away at how much footwork he worked on with his players, just simple pivots, front pivot, reverse pivot, things like that, getting guys' footwork right, because if you watch the best players in the NBA, like a Chris Paul or a Kobe or whoever.
Footwork, unreal.
It's footwork. The best players in the world have great footwork. And like people know, like Michael Jordan was a great player, but Michael Jordan was great facing the basket. He was great in the low post. Why? Because he had great footwork. And so I think that's very, very important. And that's something that I think you can really stress in a one-on-one situation, like an individual workout like you're doing. So, I think it's great what you guys are doing up there. Give me one story about a kid who was maybe tough to deal with or that just improved a whole lot. Maybe when you first started working with this guy, he was here, and when you got done with him, you just couldn't believe how far he had come.
Man, you know what? It's crazy. I will give you the most recent example. I will take a guy like Sean Williams. I'm actually getting ready to go watch him sign his letter of intent today. Sean Williams and I was like butting heads. He had his own idea of where he wanted to do things, and I'm telling him from day one, like, Sean, you're not going to be able to play at the next level as a point guard if you're thinking, I got to shoot all the balls, I don't have to pass to anybody, and I'm a bad, teammate. Like, I can't point fingers at my guys. I can't, ride them hard. If they don't catch a pass I throw, I can't show that type of emotion, because no coach at any level is going to want a player who's negative, has bad, vibes on the bench. His demeanor is just awful. So we worked with Sean on distributing first. And he kept thinking, like, I don't get to shoot. I'm like, if you get the ball and you get it to everybody else, when they start doubling and triple teaming everybody, he played with another good player in Darius Garland, who's probably going to sign with Indiana or Kentucky or Vanderbilt here in the next couple of weeks. When you start playing with guys like that, things open up for you. And he went from not being talked about to being one of the top point guards in the area because of little things that we changed with him mentally. Not only that, we started teaching him how to get to his spots. where are your spots, Sean? Where do you think you shoot well at? Well, his thought that he shoot well in the corner. I was like, I don't know any point guards in the corner in the country that shoots balls
That's right.
in the corner. So that needs to be the last thing. Unless we're running an offense where you're going to run to the corner or do a UCLA cut and get to the corner, that's something different. But you need to be shooting at the 3 spots at the top of the key, on the point and on the wings, and at the elbows. You should be lighting it up. We got that mid-range together. He finally, he started to finally pull up and shoot his jump shots in the mid-range. He was hitting the threes in transition. But then he's so athletic and he's so strong. Once we got him to slow down, he started to learn how to probe in transition or probe in the offense when he comes off pick and roll. But when he gets to that basket, he's athletic enough to dunk on you at 6'2", 6'3". So that guy right there is probably the biggest turnaround that I've ever seen a player have in 3.5 months. And he started with us in March, April, throughout the AAU season. We worked hard in June. When we got ready to hit July, our words and our staff talked about it all summer. He was like, you know what, it's time for Sean to have that breakout. He humbled himself. He stopped mumbling under his breath while he was on the court. He stopped, talking bad to his teammates. He actually became if we could give a most valuable player, it would have to be him, because when Garland went down, he ran the show and still got us a 18-point victory in Peach Jam. And that's not, something that normally happens. But Sean Williams, Hazelwood Central, signing with Kansas State today, is that guy.
Wow. And that's a great example, Coach, of what my brother and I talk about all the time on this show, of there are things that any player can learn. Like not every player has that, the intangibles that you're talking about, the leadership, just being unselfish, being a good teammate. But it requires no talent. It requires no athletic ability. But if you take a guy who has great talent already and has all those things, like I always talk about, one of my favorite players I ever coached was Dom Johnson. Dom was our best player by 10 miles, but he was also the best teammate we had. He was the hardest worker, the most unselfish guy. He's just a winner, period. So when you take a guy who has great talent and you infuse those character traits into him, you've got a winning player now. And so, Coach, this is great. I think we need to do this again. You know what I mean? We got to have you back on the show.
Man, I have the time. So all you got to do is call me. I will co-host. Look, I'm trying to sign up for my next job, people. I would love to be a co-host on somebody's show. But I will just let me know.
It doesn't pay much, but you can co-host with me.
Man, I love the game. The game has given so much to me, man. I value it so much, and all I want to do is give back. So if I got any words of wisdom to anyone or any kid or anybody, man, I'm all for it, man, because, one thing we can't pay for is time. So we can definitely give our time. So I'm all with it.
That's right. And that's the whole point of the website that I run. Check out my website, Coach. Spread the word in St. Louis, and it's justwintoday.com.
Gotcha. That's easy.
just win today. And the whole point of the website, Coach, is if you're familiar, I had a near fatal car wreck 2 years ago. I got hit by a drunk driver. 126 miles an hour. The guy, killed the girl in his car. So, my whole mentality is just, I'm going to make today a good day, period. And so
Amen.
That's what the whole website is about. Let's just spread positive vibes and spread good ideas between coaches and teachers and athletes and things like that. So we'll do this again.
Man, please do, man. It's a pleasure, brother. Love you, miss you, man. We got to catch up again. So, man, appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Love you right back, and we'll talk soon.
All right, man.
Okay.
Yeah.